Who am I? My name is Brandon Eugene Campbell. I'm born and raised in Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm a person that believes that empathy and understanding is the true key to building community and collaboration.
My name is Neil Govea. I'm a native New Yorker, currently live in Washington Heights, which is Upper Manhattan. And I'm all about exchanging ideas with my fellow New Yorkers and getting to the bottom of various topics.
So my name is Kim Rogers. I am a communications manager. Right now I'm working for a public health nonprofit. My personal brand is social justice and equity and making sure that everybody in this crazy country has the basic stuff that they need. So that's kind of where I am right now.
What comes to mind when I think of the Constitution is what makes up America.
So when you say the word Constitution, I just think about like an old ass dusty document.
What comes to mind when you say Constitution is ancient, United States foundation based in a lot of lack of understanding and perspective. And that's the safe way. That's the safe answer.
I feel like, since we're just talking about the Bill of Rights, if there was a law that I would change in there, I feel like right to bear arms is questionable to me. It's just when you see all of the gun violence that's happening in our country, it feels like, can we address that by sort of limiting people's access to guns? I think there's a lot of complexities that come with that, but I think even just revisiting that to try to figure out how we can make it better would be a big step in making sure that we decrease the number of gun deaths that happen in our country.
Currently, the right to bear arms and freedom of speech are the ones that are really prevalent in modern day.
We can only just educate our youth and future generations as to what guns do, what they are, what they're meant for, and how to be safe.
Right, but here's the one thing. So there's a difference between that being like a once in a 20 to 50 year span that happening versus we have mass shootings on an almost daily basis here.
Yeah.
I think mass shootings in America are defined as like four or five or more people die.
Yeah.
So we're talking about every day. Isn't it worth an effort to make sure that we're at least trying to decrease the frequency at which these things are happening?
You traveled 1,000 different countries.
You know what I'm saying? Hey, Mary Pat.
Yeah.
Can I relay that story in Vermont? Yikes. You never know, it's tight. But actually the thing that came to my mind when I was discussing the ableism portion, and the story that came to mind is that family friends of ours who live in Vermont, still, a blended family, 3 sons, early teens and teens, had mental instability of varying levels, all 3 sons. And I think this was when I was in college.
Yes.
And so that's between 08 and 11. And we'd heard that one of I think it was the middle son, he went to his best friend's house and they were hanging out, they're boys, and best friend is sleeping. He took a nap, as one does when you're comfortable with who you're with. And the middle son sees that there's a gun in the room, because I believe Vermont it's like a hunting state and so on. There's a gun, doesn't even check to see that the safety is not on, ammo is in there. I think it was point blank. He shot his friend in the head, thought it was...
Yeah, chest.
Oh, in the chest.
Thought it was funny.
But still, right here.
Yeah.
Thought it was a joke, thought it was funny, didn't even recognize that this was something that, okay? Mm-hmm. Yes, they're white. Yes, this is more of a rural location, what have you. But what stands out to me is the fact that it was commonly known that these kids were on a spectrum.
And there was a gun in the house.
And there was a gun in the house.
Not only in the house, it was open.
It was in the house. It was open. It wasn't his house. It was the friend.
So variables.
The variables are outrageous. But that story rocked both that whole state, of course, our relationships, and just my thought also on the people that hold guns, which is when it then came to my mind of I mean, if we have to be so microcosmic and people kill people, fine. But like, and yes, there's also the tools that we utilize. And yes, it's also the intention, but it's also the fact that like the law needs to be rewritten. It needs to have further limiting words. Like not everybody should just be able to get it. There should be a very stringent testing system for you to be able to get this. I shouldn't be able to just go online and get a certification from Florida.
I think
that's outrageous.
Yo, shout out to Florida, getting all the heat
You're
right
mad
now.
annoying.
I think your comment is a good segue to my next point,
Yeah.
which I was going to use to kind of sum it up, is that
Fucking hot.
is that we have, because of our political climate, I mean,
Sure.
just all over the course of, I guess, American history and how much
Yeah, it's
people
hot.
utilize certain issues to
Sure.
push agendas, to,
Right.
you know, to incite their constituents so that they vote for them, right? So again, if we're just talking just straight practical, so you said very practically, you said that, things need to change, right?
Yeah.
So people always point, specifically conservatives, point, fervently to the Second Amendment. In order for the amendment to change, it needs to be changed by a 3/4 effort. I believe, if I'm saying this correctly,
Okay.
3/4 effort of the Senate, right?
Okay.
Or so.
I'm not factoring
in
in.
order for that, that's 75%.
Yeah.
The likelihood of that happening
Is low.
because of you're at least gonna have at any given time no less than 40% of no less than 30%, an extreme of the
Of a
Senate
majority.
or Congress is going to be
Right, it's always gonna be a
and
minority.
so the likelihood of that happening is so far from likely.
happening, sure.
I think it needs to change, but why can't we just be human and look at the facts, right? If we look at the data again, I hate to go back to the data, but like we have a problem.
Yes,
Like,
we do have a problem.
We're the only country, so human, we can go to the minutia, this and that, but it's like, can we just be human for a second? People shouldn't be able to get certain guns. People should be vetted, to your point, for certain guns. Communities that have had problems need to stop being won over police, need to be reinvested in, have the resources. Like, if we're going to attack the gun problem, we just can't look at one thing. There's just a myriad of things, including just the bickering about like facts. Like, this shit matters. Like, stop using your audience's ignorance to amplify, your personal like message. Like, that's also fucked up. Like, there's just so many.
That's also just politics.
Right.
That will never change.
Yeah, and
so-
media as well. So the one thing I feel like that we haven't dug into, and y'all are gonna get tired of me saying this, to me, yes, while we can amend the amendment and create better policies, the implementation matters, right? Because so one thing we haven't talked about is who has the right to bear arms in this country. Black people. We're talking about what's the guy's name I think it was Minnesota.
Why was I gonna say everyone?
Where they no. So everybody does, but when a cop rolls up on a black person that does or doesn't have a gun, and their first reaction is, "I'm going to shoot this
Philando
motherfucker."
Castile.
Philando Castile had his permit, told the officer, "I have a gun. I'm going to go get it," and that motherfucker still shot him.
I think the guy who shot him was Spanish too. I think.
No, I think it was a woman.
Doesn't matter. Anti-blackness is universal. Doesn't matter who the person was that shot him. And so my point is, there are certain people who have the right to bear arms with no issue. Think about, remember I think it was somewhere in Oregon, there was some kind of like anti-government type thing coming. There was a bunch of white dudes with the kind of weapons you don't want to fucking see.
And there were cops there. And stuff?
Yes.
And they like held up a battalion almost?
The cops did nothing to them.
Yeah.
Imagine
Right, I remember
a
that.
giant group.
Right, it would be a wrap.
Imagine a giant group of black people with that kind of weaponry.
Yep.
They would have all been fucking massacred
Yes,
right
you're right.
there in that moment.
Yes.
So we can't ignore the fact.
I think that's- I think
Are you
that's-
ignoring this?
Black
No.
Panthers did that.
Bro.
That was in we're not
Not
talking
only
about
that,
that.
but
Also,
no.
Black Panther
I was
was
about to say-
systematically killed off as
I was about
well.
to say, let's talk about it. The government killed the Black Panthers. Literally.
Our government is
Literally.
not for
I don't wanna-
everybody.
I don't want to open that book.
No,
I'm
J.
just
Edgar
saying,
Hoover,
like,
you know what I'm
they
saying?
did it.
Yeah.
I was like, wait.
They did it and got killed.
Into it.
I don't know enough about that.
But
to be
specifically,
honest.
like, addition to your point, I just want to amplify
Yeah.
your point. I'm trying to throw you a oop. But specifically during the Trump campaign, many groups of, white nationalists, etc., came out in their regalia, armed with ARs and shit, and they were protected. You know what I'm saying? As, we're doing this permit to
By who?
By the
federal government.
by the cops?
State police. I don't want to say federal.
Well,
We're talking about cops here.
they had freedom of congregation or whatever it's called.
But we're
Right,
saying
that's the
that
point.
it's
You're
not
amplifying the
applied
point.
equally. Is
No,
all I'm
it's
saying.
not applied equally. It's
what I'm
not
saying.
ever going to be applied equally.
But that's what we need to be working towards. I refuse to accept that it'll
That
never happen.
is an
And I will
inevitability.
refuse to stop working towards that and calling people out when they're like, no, it's. I'm not going to accept that that's going to be the case forever. It very
Well, maybe.
thank you, but I'm not gonna sit and be comfortable and allow that to happen.
And I respect you for that because I am completely of the like, this is how it is. Since there are two people on the planet, they were going to fight. So here we are. Right? Like, I'm all about, actually, I'm not all about, let me rephrase that. I hear and understand that to be true, but I think that there are a lot of transitions socially that are happening at the exact same time in a bigger way than maybe I would even wager any other time in modern history. And so I don't think that means we should do one thing at a time, but I do think that it might be a better way to pick the one that you think might be the longest lasting, which then I would say, like, whether that be family values and or education, or maybe those go together. And then this allows you to like move towards the other branches that need to be changed. But it seems like everybody wants every single thing to be absolutely changed immediately. And like, let's keep it real, like a generation or two has to like kick rocks before like some newness
Of course.
occurs. So what about that grace of space and time where like, oh, some people are recognizing that there's privilege. I know you don't
I'm listening.
But like,
I'm listening.
there has to be some grace of time where people are starting to recognize these things that you've known your whole life.
Yes, but so I think it's for you to look at me as a Black woman and say, you have to have some grace when people in my community are being killed because this process is moving slowly.
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to have grace about that.
Not only that,
I'm not going to do it.
No, progress is.
I will.
Well, this is the thing. Progress doesn't happen on its own. Progress doesn't happen as a result of people recognizing, like, oh, I guess I'm kind of.
But that's also not what I'm saying.
No, but I'm saying, I know, and I'm going to your point. What I'm saying is, like, for us to say, like, progress only happens because of the individual who are fervent advocates for those causes, who demand. But I'm saying, who demand change immediately. That's what allows progress to happen incrementally, because you're right, like shit over time. But if those people were like, you know what, I'd like you to change. Could you change nicely? Could you please do that?
Right.
Like, shit's not gonna happen. That's not how change happens or has ever happened over the course of history in our society, specifically in America.
But there's someone who's grown up in the 80s, 90s, and the millennium period. I can honestly say there's been a lot of great improvements.
This guy looks 19 years old. I want whatever
I know. How old are you?
You said you grew up in the 80s and 90s.
Well, whatever he's drinking, give me a gallon.
Let him rock.
It's that vegan lifestyle.
Someone who's grown up in the 80s and
Yeah.
90s in New York City.
Yeah.
I've seen firsthand the relationship between law enforcement and people of color improve drastically.
Sure.
And we live in an era where we have access to information. We're sharing ideas.
Yep.
I think that's a great thing, but there is also a downside to having this information, whether it be social media. I think it's social media is setting back lots of the great progress that we've made, because it's very easy to upload something that's
Take it out of context. You don't get the full story. Just small that.
and it just it could spread like wildfire.
Yeah.
And and
Yes.
it's across the board.
Dual-edged
We tend to see it more so when people of color are the victims, and this is not to say that people of color are not mistreating white people.
Okay.
And doing bodily harm to them, because I get sent, I've come across videos like that all the time as well.
Sure.
So we just, we have to acknowledge that there's, we're being fed something that could really, erase all of the great work that's been done.
The machine is feeding us.
Yeah, there was a machine feeding us, and I grew up, as a little kid in the Archie Bunker era.
Where's
the
that at?
Jefferson or
That's
Bunker.
funny you bring that up.
No, where's that?
Keep
Just
going.
for
No,
my
keep
context,
going. I want to
I'm not
hear. I want to hear
familiar.
this.
Say where that is, and then maybe for our people who don't know
That's
Archie
so
Bunker.
funny you bring that up.
So-
Bring that up.
No, so I grew up in the Archie Bunker era, who is this guy from the sitcom called
Yeah.
All in the Family.
Yeah.
Now on the show, he was a very would make lots of racist comments and bigoted comments and so forth, and it was you would laugh it off, right? But the irony of it was that his closest friend was this guy named Lionel,
I remember.
who was the son of George Jefferson from the Jeffersons, right? So what I'm going to say is that I grew up in an era where the Archie Bunker era, you would say things and it would be you would laugh it off, keep it moving, and then you realize, okay, we're all human. We may have just made a little,
little oops.
a little oops, but at the end of the day, we're still, we're still humans, whatever.
Yeah.
You could get past it, and it was vice versa.
Sure.
It would be,
Yeah.
a
Back
white
and forth.
person
Yeah,
making fun of a
'cause-
white person, and so forth.
And on the Jeffersons, he would say some wild
And then-
stuff
and
too.
it was
Yeah, but
Jefferson
that
would
is
say
not
something
acceptable
like
anymore today.
Why?
Right, it's not, we've reached this period where, we're living in an era of everything is just offensive.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Snowflake era.
it's okay to describe a suspect fully, I'm gonna say a Puerto Rican looking guy with a fade or whatever, why should you?
he's Colombian.
Or whatever. Oh yeah, it's just very nice. But what I'm saying is that what I'm saying is that it's okay to be to be.
It's okay to speak,
and
man. It's
speak
okay
and-
to say something.
Do you want to go? Or should I go?
So to wrap things up, I'm just saying someone who's grown from these different generations. There's been a lot of great progress I've seen firsthand, and it's slowly being eroded because of of this narrative that
The machine.
the machine that's.
I agree with Neil.
us,
I agree with Neil because when I was growing up and I was learning English and everything, I had the black box that had all the channels.
Yeah.
Right?
illegal.
So I was like, shit. I didn't really understand a lot of the channels.
Sure.
So I was like, all right, I got stuck at Nick at Night, which was I think was 33.
Yo.
Right? So I'm watching. I'd be up late, because
Right.
I was just up late every night. Nick at Night, Nick at Night, Nick at Night, Nick at Night, and I remember always laughing at Archie Bunker. Always laughing at Archie Bunker. And then never taking anything he said as racist. Fast forward,
Right.
and as an adult,
You're like, oh.
no, not me. I still see it as just a guy in his house speaking how he wants to speak. And now we're in an era where you need to watch what you say wherever you go because you're going to offend someone no matter what, right? So how this relates to guns issues. In Friday, right? In Ice Cube's movie Friday, Debo is a big motherfucker, right? And he had it out for Craig.
Are you about
And Craig said, oh man, I need to buy a gun. I can't beat this guy's ass. And Craig's father said, excuse me, what are you doing? And gave him the speech, right? And Craig was like, right. And Craig was like, man, I didn't even want to hear that, right? Craig represented everybody, young adolescents, early 20s at that time. And Ice Cube made such a powerful message with that one scene that you don't see often anymore, right? And this is a guy who said, fuck police coming straight from the underground, right? He made a conscious effort to say, look, you don't need guns to protect yourself. And God forbid you get an ass whooping, at least you have the next morning to keep on fighting. Our youth is afraid of an ass whooping, afraid of failure, afraid of so many different things that what they run to are these violent outlets. If the more violent I am, the better I'm protected, and I don't see where the correlation is in that.
So I
Video games.
respect both of y'all, love y'all, but I have to challenge both of you guys' comments. You just utilized an example in the media to excuse away racism, but then utilize another example in the media to try to amplify the use of accountability in the same way. So when you said this gentleman, Archie Bunker, is a guy in his house, well, Archie Bunker wasn't a guy in his house. He's a fictitious character that someone wrote into a script for you to laugh at because, you know, racism was a culture that is acceptable in America. You know what I'm saying? Like, if we're really talking about what actually happened. So I understand like how we perceive that shit, but how it happens is amplified is important. Additionally, you spoke towards talking about, you know, the progress that has been made over the years. And of course we appreciate as humans like any progress that's made, but progress from fucked up to a little less shitty, you know what I'm saying, it's still not acceptable. So when we talk about things that have been perpetuated in society over the course of history through various systems, you know, individuals who are experiencing that like oppression, those problems the most, even though it's a little bit better, we still should be fervently advocating, amplifying those issues and fighting for them. So when you speak towards social media, yes, social media does sensationalize things, but I think what's beautiful about the media and the open social media that we have today is what it's really doing, in my opinion, is really just it's giving you a bigger lens and pulling back the curtain to shit that's already been going on.
Yep.
So when we say like, oh, it's crazy because you're finally a lot of communities outside of my own, because a lot of us are saying, oh, this, you know, other people are like, why is this so happening? Like, this is so crazy. Like this, it's like, no, this is shit that happens every day that we've been experiencing, that we may not have access to certain media platforms to inform other individuals. Yes, it can be used maliciously, but by and large, a lot of this shit is just pulling back the veil. And those same systems, which I brought up in the beginning, are utilizing them in ways to make money. Like they may be sensationalizing this or using a run with this story. And then the last thing I want to say is, you made another point about description, right? When you're describing a suspect or even a victim of a certain crime, we have to be careful. Those platforms, again, are utilizing them to, based on their perception, how they've been taught, and over a course of time, a lot of these platforms additionally are run and owned by specific billionaires who have specific agendas. Again, but when you said like, can you fully describe a suspect? Well, yeah, that would be true if it was applied equally, right? That's not how it's applied. Like if we're talking about a Muslim who did something and how they're described, if we're talking about a black person who did something, how they're described, versus a white man who commits a mass murder, like that shit is not the same. So yes, we would love that to be the case. Like, yeah, you can describe that individual, but how that's been applied in our society has not been equal. And so
well, what I was going at is like, you know, if I saw someone commit a crime and, you know, it's a blonde hair, blue eyed guy, it's like, oh, a white male.
With blonde hair, blue
Yes, you know,
that's
like, because, you know, I work with some people who are afraid to describe someone else as black.
What do you do?
You know? So I do fundraising. So yeah, you've come, as, you know, and a Caucasian, I work with Caucasian people who like, oh, you know, who did you see, you know, and a guy, he was, you know, I'm like, okay,
everyone wants to skip the color part.
Listen, yeah, everyone wants to skip, you know, skip because, you know, I wonder how, you know, how we got to this part where we just have, you know, we kind of have to be on more.
So how do you suggest that we do what you advised?
Which portion?
That beginning part where we need to consistently fight and uplift and empower. It was the beginning part of what you said. You use better words than I am right now.
No, I just say, well, communities that are being hurt most. I mean, we're all, honestly, if we're just talking about humanity.
I'm sorry, if we're not just like fixing the Second Amendment, like what are we doing? Like what do you suggest on a daily conscious effort base that we could be doing?
I think thinking about problems from a humanistic perspective, right? Like saying like, how does this actually affect me? How are my actions either helping this cause or hurting this cause? As it relates, you said we're not specifically talking about guns.
Well, I guess I'm just thinking of what do you think besides the recognition and the acknowledgement of these things that you guys brought to the table, like what then is there, what can we be doing? If we're not gonna just change the amendment, right? Like we're not gonna just change the system. What are the daily conscious efforts that we can be putting in? I know you don't want to educate, but like, can you?
I'm just gonna get 2 points.
Like, what can we do?
Yeah.
Well, for me, I think it's twofold, right? Again, when we interact with humans on a daily basis, like I'm happy to be here and have this conversation. Yes. Last time, and this time with you, Neil, Marcel, and the other young lady who was with us.
Yeah.
Last time as well. I think this is very helpful. But I think additionally, we do need to be incredibly engaged in our process and how it works. We discussed our feelings towards that, our, looking at who are the right people who actually advocate and stand for the things that we believe in, not the acceptable person who's, most likely to win or who's,
who paid off so-and-so so that.
No, let's literally, I think so. The thing we can do most, I believe, is educate ourselves. I think it starts with that. You know what I'm saying? Being humble enough to know, like, okay,
I don't know.
I feel I may be angry about this. I may fervently disagree with this individual, but let me be humble enough to be like, you know what? Before I go out into this world and, take action, let me look it up a little bit more, and then maybe talk to some people who it actually affects, whether it be any policy. You know what I'm saying? And that's just how I feel about it.
Education and the family structure play a really big role in this, only because you can get educated as much as you can in school and different programs.
Through the machine,
whatever you want to call it, education. But if nothing's going on at home, where you sleep or you wake up or you spend most of your time, there's going to be issues, And I remember there was some type of school shooting, and I was like 8 or 7, and my mom looked at me and she's like, "Look," and she gave me the whole gun speech. Stuck with me so much that when I wanted to watch City of God for like the 8th time, my brother was in the room. My brother was in the room. Yeah. And I was like, man, I'm not gonna kick him out. He's 7, 8, I was like, look, you're gonna watch this movie with me. And I gave him the gun talk. And I said, look, you're gonna see kids with guns, you're gonna see all this stuff, but that's not cool. Holding a gun, that doesn't make you cool. Like, killing people does not make you cool.
Right.
And I gave him the same speech my parents gave it to him. And I don't know what kind of impact it made on him, but I felt good when he looked at me and said, "I know, you're right." And I was like, yeah, So it's like, if there was an issue with my brother, I probably would have identified it with his reaction.
Right.
And he gave me a positive reaction. Right. So these kids that have this inner violence and this inner anger, talk to them. Listen, that's bad, right? Holding that gun, shooting that kid is bad. How do you feel about that? Talk to your kids.
In order to do that. And so
talk to your kids, talk to these people, see what they have to say, what their views on what they're looking at. Because at the end of the day, we can all agree that we're pretty desensitized.
Yes.
So it's very interesting to see what someone perceives on the screen in comparison to what you perceive on the screen. So what I find funny might not be what you find funny, and what I think is violent might not.
Right.
So when we're all old already, whatever we believe is what we believe. Or I'm more concerned about the adolescents, the youth, because they're still developing and they can change 7 ways to Sunday.
Yeah.
So your point, education, family is what's going to drive these next generations into real policy changes. Because I don't think we have the answers. I think we're dealing with it and we don't have the answers. We're just gonna have to take this L. The next generation take this L, and it's just gonna work until someone gets it. But these conversations are important.
Okay, the starting point.
Yeah, it's got to start now, because we're hitting a boiling point.
Yeah, we're at the boiling point.
We are at a boiling point, and
what would you do, Kim?
So I just want to say, take the L mindset again doesn't work.
Right. I knew it.
We're all in. So the things that I think
I say left, she says right. I say black, she says white.
The things that
I say.
There we go. Really get me, Marcel. Really get me. So for me, I would say.
I'm with you. Go ahead.
Empathy and accountability.
Yes.
2 critical pieces. And I think, just again, going back to the take the L thing, no, we're all living. We all, hopefully, God willing, whoever you believe in willing, we have at least 50 more years here on this planet.
Sure.
Are you going to let your 50 years go being like, oh, the next generation's got it? I don't think we can do that. There's got to be accountability from everyday people like us. There's got to be accountability from politicians and empathy too. To me, I don't understand how you could see things like Sandy Hook, at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, the Parkland shooting, see those things, know that as a legislator, you have the ability to put something into action that could at least start to minimize these things, but you're so worried about NRA being in your back pocket, or you being in NRA's back pocket because they're giving you the money, that you're not willing to do anything about it. That's a lack of empathy, one, for the suffering of people, and also a lack of accountability for doing what's right for you signed up to be, who knows why politicians are politicians. That's a whole nother
other
issue.
Yeah.
But if we're looking at it theoretically, you're supposed to be here representing the people in your communities. And this could happen in anybody's community. So why wouldn't you take a step to make a change? And again, too, so us as people, politicians, and then also in the systems that we have in this country, and I think specifically law enforcement, our criminal justice system, there's got to be more accountability about how cops are taught to interact. Again, this is about the right to bear arms, how cops are taught to interact with people who are bearing arms and how their own biases, like there's got to be education in that point about shifting the fact that when you see a black man with a gun or with his hand in his pocket, that's not a threat.
Right.
That's not always a threat. It might be, and that's fine. But the default right now is if there's anything that looks a little bit close to a black man being a quote threat, which is sometimes just existing on a street corner, and we're gonna you don't.
Yes.
Or they're just not even valuing your life, so I'm gonna just take liberties to do what I please.
So,
I talk it off.
It's okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted you to clarify also what can we do individually?
Oh, as people.
What's our accountability that we can be doing? Truly, I want to know.
To me, for me, what I like to say is I like to hold other people accountable. And so
you do.
Your own, being able within your own little tiny sub community, doing whatever you can to help educate and have these conversations is also important, right? You have something to share. Your friends have things to share back with you. But I think if we're not talking to each other, which is why this is so excellent, then you don't have the opportunity to learn and to grow. And so we all have to be, again, willing to take a stand on these things and do it publicly and in front of people.
I wanted to add that in regards to change, we have to take into consideration that America is a country of 300 plus million people. It's a huge pool of people to change and to impact. And we can make references to Norway and Sweden, but these are countries who have around about 10 million. So the reason why change, I feel it's going to take some time here, is because of our size, our diversity, and everything that comes with us as a country. There's a lot that comes with America when you think about it, when you break it down, from the coast, from the center to the north to the south. It's really a unique place comparatively when you think about it, overall. So that's why the dialogue is important, but it's just, we have to think about our size and diversity, and that plays a role in the progress of change.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you guys for sticking with us through this multi-part episode on guns in these United States. We had quite a setting at the table, and make sure you stay tuned next week where we're gonna get really into drugs, addiction, recreation, all the things that come with that. And as always, make sure to like, subscribe, and let us know what you brought back to your tables in the comments below. Hit the bell.